All right, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about super investing. This is actually one of my favorite topics. So if we look at super investing, I call this, whenever you invest for one type of return, that's just investing, right? I went and took money and I bought a piece of real estate. That can be just a single investment. However, there are times when you can invest, you can invest your time and then you could get multiple, maybe all three types of returns. So that's the type of stuff, and that's where the creativity, in my opinion, really comes in. So let's just go through a few examples I have. College, real estate, skiing, church, grandparents, and children. So we'll start with college. In most cases, in college, you're giving up money and time. And so if you say, the only thing I'm getting back is those skills and abilities. And I kind of thought that when I was early on in my college days, and even towards the end a little bit. But then I came to realize college is actually a great place because the people who are there, you're getting relationships, one-on-one relationships with a professor, with your certain peers. There's a number of people in my MBA class that I've kept in touch with, become successful, talked with them, helped them out. You also become part of that group, right? As you go to college, okay, I'm a graduate from this school. The school they want you to be successful. So they'll push you. They have groups to help you. And then you kind of get that reputation from them as well. You also get access to a lot of tools. When I was at school, I had access to a lot of tools that when I was to learn, I had access to engineering equipment and all sorts of things that I wouldn't have had access to otherwise. So if you look at going to college, and you also have a lot of people who are kind of have similar business models. I want to be a technologist, I want to learn those type of things. So the people that you're interacting with are going to have similar business models, so you're going to get that reinforced. Then you have some social assets coming in. You've got, of course, the abilities, as well as some of the tools, things that can be accessible. So if you look now at real estate, so I said real estate, if you just buy it, not great, and give it to a financial manager. Some of the people I know, they own real estate and then they work on it with their family. My wife, or just working with your children. One of my relatives has real estate, took his children to do it. So now he's showing them what the culture of hard work is. Replacing toilets, cleaning out really disgusting rooms. When I was young, I worked with my mom, and so I was in a family business, which was cleaning apartments that were in horrible states. And I remember spending hours in a bathtub just scrubbing grime out, right? That reinforced both the culture of doing hard things and doing disgusting things, doing whatever it takes, right? It also reinforced my relationship with my mom. It also gave me money and those type of things. So owning real estate or working in a family business can often have this reinforcing effect of you learn new abilities, you get strengthened relationships, you get money, and you also get the business model reinforced, which is exceptionally important. So let's look at skiing, right? I live in Utah. There's great skiing here. It's just expensive. So when I worked with a friend about 7 years ago now, and I was like, man, I can't afford skiing. It's too expensive. And he said, you don't understand. If you look at skiing as just an expense, if you go alone, yes, it's really expensive. But what I've found is skiing actually reinforces with my kids this idea of doing hard things, overcoming obstacles. There's a lot of scary stuff you come across. It also reinforces their health. It gives them new abilities. It reinforces these relationships you have with each other, because there's always accidents and trust and things. I broke my collarbone skiing, and my kids were there to help me and get the ski patrol, right? So I could get fixed. So and then there's a group, we're skiers. There's a group that you become associated with. It does cost money, and it is a good chunk of money. But after my friend explained it to me that I'm getting a return in my business model, my social assets, and my human assets, he also told me, make sure that when you're on the lift, you're getting on the lift with your kids, you're talking to your kids about their day, about their school, really connecting with them, right? He had a whole plan for skiing, whereas I've seen other people I want to go skiing, and they go ski alone because they're just, I want to ski. And his thing was, no, skiing is an activity, and if you've done right, then you can actually make it into a super investing activity. Next, church. So depending on the church that you go to, often you're getting, you're spending your time, and you may contribute some of the money, but you're getting access to a group, and you're getting in a group with similar business models often, right? They believe the same things, they believe the same values. So you have someone with common business models, so they're going to, especially if you have children, they're going to reinforce those values onto the children as well. So you have some other people, because you're a part of the group, you'll also develop one-on-one relationships. A number of jobs that I've got have been because of relationships that I had, that I knew from those groups. So they'll give you social assets. There's also a reputation that most churches have of being giving and productive, so that can be helpful as well. You may end up, if you donate to the church, you could do that, and it could hurt you in a little bit of time. However, what I found, one of the interesting aspects that I saw in my church group was, I had a whole group of trees, like 5 massive trees that I needed to take out of my front yard. Massive project, and it was interesting because one of my friends from church came over and said, "Oh, look at you taking those down. Hey, why don't we talk at church about it? See who else wants to come around." Turns out, I could have spent, I think it was $5,000 to $10,000 to get those trees removed, but I then had people from the church that showed up and said, "Hey, I hear you want those removed. Let's look at them. Let's scope it out." And then the next Saturday, I had, I want to say 10 or 15 men and boys who were at my house. One guy brought a huge industrial chipper. They all brought chainsaws. They were all like, "Yeah, I love this stuff. This is great." So I actually saved money in that sense and developed relationships with these guys that I wouldn't have otherwise. So, and then also the guys, I talked to them, they wanted to reinforce their culture, which was a culture of service, which again is to develop social resources. So there's these elements where being in a church group can be useful and can actually give you multiple forms of return. The next one, so grandparents. If your grandparents, sometimes they'll just give people money or they'll take the kids out. But if you work with your grandparents correctly, they will actually reinforce, or your parents with your children, you can have your grandparents reinforce the values that you have and that they have to your children. So by pushing on, by structuring grandparent visits, you can actually have them work on the business model. I've had my mom teach my kids how to cook. That's an important thing and part of our culture. I enjoy cooking as well, so that's one of the things I got from my mom, right? Cooking, and then also how do you cook healthy? Also developing that relation with the grandparents, because the grandparents tend to have resources, other things that they can help out with. And then turns out my mom would also, most grandparents like to pay their grandchildren a little above market average. So if they have them work, they'll reinforce this, they'll develop social assets, they'll teach them abilities. My mom can teach you how to clean a bathroom, spick and span, and she will enforce the kids on doing that. It's been great. So some of these things, if the grandparents are used well, they can actually be a super investing time. If not, it'll be a waste. And then finally, one that's a little weird, I suppose, for people would be having children, right? Children, if you reinforce these things right with your spouse, they will actually provide you with additional ability. They'll provide you with health time. They will support you, right? You'll have the one-on-one relationship with them. As they get married, kind of your group will expand of people that will help and support you. And then they will also have, their own money, tools, resources. So if you look at children, they actually are a super investment. They take a lot of money, often, and they can be sacrifices. But ultimately, often what you see is they actually hold marriages together because they're both our children and we want what's best for them together. So you have this common strategy. So those are just a few ideas. I think as you go about activities, some things like that I had thought about that may have ended up in a loss, and I think I mentioned this before, like I want to play volleyball. That's one of the things I enjoyed. I used to play that on my own. So I was part of that group. Well, then I was like, you know what, I want to get my kids into volleyball. So then I invited my kids. I had all these people at volleyball, and I was very cautious because that would be my social asset, right? If I take bad players, then maybe I get kicked out and I get stop getting invited. So I was sensitive to that, but then through my kids' culture of really working hard, and I stayed on. I'm like, if you're gonna come, you've got to work hard. You've got to be disciplined. You've got to push yourself. And they said, so they did that. What happened is ultimately my kids got, as they got older, they got a lot of coaching, and then they also got connected into the group. So now, if I don't go, they're still invited because the group likes them. So there are activities where you look at like, how could I invest for another form of return? And I think that's really a fun way to look at it, because you're like, well, I want to watch this movie. Great. What if I watched it with someone else? Okay, then I'm doing an investing. How else, what other activities could I do to creatively generate more resources? And so I love the topic of super investing. I think most activities can be turned into super investing if you're cognizant about the benefits of it. Oh, one final one that I thought was interesting is when I was young, my mom, I always went shopping with my mom for some reason. Till I was about 12 or 13, I think, even past that a little bit, I believe. So during those times, I would go shopping. That's actually where I learned how to shop. I learned how to price compare because we were not wealthy. So it would be like, well, what do we do? What's the best price per ounce? How she shopped. I learned how to bag groceries. I learned how to learned a lot of the recipes and stuff that would go along with that. So that whole experience, normally if you look at it, my mom had to go shop. That was what she did in our family. Well, she could just be doing that. But then when she took along a child, then all of a sudden it became reinforcing some of the business model, some of the way that she thought about things, the decisions she made. And then also it was investing in my abilities. It was also reinforcing my relationship with her. So ultimately, something as simple as shopping, if done with purpose, can actually be considered super investing.